Welcome to Command Control Power, the longest-running Apple consulting podcast. For over a decade, we've delivered weekly episodes filled with epic tech support stories, troubleshooting insights, discussions about managing clients and businesses, and interviews with industry colleagues and vendors, all tailored for our pro listeners. We also offer exclusive content through Patreon. This private podcast feed is designed specifically for IT professionals, providing valuable advice and guidance on tackling the more complex aspects of running your practice, working with clients and employees, and managing device fleets. With a modest monthly contribution, you'll gain access to a wealth of advanced Apple expertise, meaningful connections, and a community driven by a shared passion for Apple technology. Visit commandcontrolpower.com and click support to learn more. And now, on to the show.
Thanks, everybody, for listening to Command Control Power. We are doing our live stream special for Apple's 50th anniversary. As we record, it's April 1st, and we are talking about the 50th anniversary of Apple. We talked in part one about some of our early experiences with computers, some of our experiences with what was our first Apple computer, what was our first experience with the Mac, what was our first professional Mac. And I had a question at the end of part one. What was the first keyboard shortcut you learned? You guys may not be surprised to learn what the first keyboard shortcut I learned was. In fact, it was referenced by a client on the phone earlier today. And she has no idea that we do a podcast. She has no idea that exactly. I don't tell clients we do a podcast, so I don't typically promote that. And I don't think she knew it was Apple's 50th anniversary. There's no reason for her to mention this. And I will also say that no client ever mentions this keyboard shortcut. I don't know if it's come up once in 22 years of doing this. I might have to tell them this keyboard shortcut. But this client had an issue where she was on location, photographer client. She was doing a photography shoot. She had her client there. The whole team is assembled. And she was on the very last image. She's staging this shot or whatever. And she didn't have power nearby, so she's on her MacBook Pro. I think it's an M3 Pro, and it's running out of power. She's at 10%, she's at 5%, she's at 3%. And she calls me in a panic because the computer died. She didn't have power nearby. She should have had power, and I'm going to send her a battery backup recommendation in case this happens again. But she called me in a panic because the computer, she heard it go to like high fans and like it locked up and it shut down. Basically, it just ran out of power, but she was in the middle of all this stuff and she was worried that she lost everything. And then it wouldn't turn back on. And she said, plugged it in. I tried turning it on. I said, you sometimes have to wait a little while. And she said, I waited 10 minutes, but I was eating lunch, so I waited 10 minutes. I said, that may not be long enough. You may have to wait a little bit longer. Sure enough, she let it go. She waited a little bit longer. But she was telling me as she's trying all these different things, she says, I even tried that keyboard shortcut. What is it called? Command Control Power. Is exactly what she said to me. So if anybody wants to dispute the proper order of this keyboard shortcut, because this came up on Daring Fireball recently, and a few people sounded off about the proper order of how to write the shortcut out. Right? It's not on my shirt. It's on Jerry's shirt. The order of the key, of the command key, the control key, the power button. Some people will say, no, you guys are wrong. It's control command power. Apple will say the same thing. Apple has an order where these are supposed to, if there's a shift key involved, it comes before the command. If there's a control key, it comes before the command. I disagree. Nevertheless, I'm not an authority on this. Apple can tell me whatever they want, but real people say command control power, and they always have. And even my client today, unprompted, command control power. So I share this because it was on Apple's 50th anniversary and on the day that we're doing a live stream to support this, and our show is called Command Control Power, she said, Command Control Power, totally unprompted. I thought that was ironic. That happens to be the very first keyboard shortcut I ever remember learning. I was there in elementary school, and I learned it as exactly right. Mike Kingsley in the chat says, my first key reset command was the older version of what your show is. So on the Apple II, it was Control Open Apple Reset. So I learned this as Open Apple Control Reset, I think is how I learned it. So I learned it as Open Apple first. But what is this Open Apple thing? How old am I, right? That I know a thing called Open Apple. But that's what we used to learn. And there were two Apple keys. There was a closed Apple and an open Apple. And Sam, what's your recollection?
Open Apple on, Joe?
Oh, I want to say left. Is that right or wrong?
I'm like 90% sure, bro.
Okay, fair enough. We'll go with that. Yeah, they had, and as Mike goes on to say, they had open Apple and closed Apple keys, which were before the Command key. Exactly. And there's a story that Steve Jobs came back and said, you can't have two Apple logos on the keyboard. It looks ridiculous. If you like, I recently read Apple's branding guidelines or whatever, as I, in the 11th hour, got recertified to stay in the program and everything. And I just read through some of the material. And Apple is very specific. If you have an Apple logo on your website, you use your correct Apple Partner Network logo, you can't have another one somewhere else. You can't put two side by side. You can't have, there's very specific rules about this. And I like to say this goes back to Steve Jobs. He said, you just can't have two Apple logos on the keyboard. It just looks silly. Like, you just don't do that. So they changed it from an Apple logo to the Command key. And it's been that way ever since. But that was the one I learned. Open Apple, Control, Reset.
Wasn't there a time when it was the Apple logo and the Command key, like on the same key?
Probably. Yeah, that's a good question. Like maybe in a transitionary period where they wanted people to understand it was the same. Yeah.
I think you're right, Sam. It had been there for a while.
Yeah.
How about all the computers that would say save changes and shut down? Do you remember that?
Save changes and shut down.
I
remember the term. When did that appear? Yeah.
When did it leave? I don't know. There was a time before you would quit your, like most of the time we didn't like sleep our computers. We shut them down.
Yeah.
And there was always like that pop-up message. It would say save changes and shut down if you had something that was open and it was reminding you to save. But maybe if someone could bring more clarity. But I remember that was a big part of just the Apple experience, was seeing that message at the end of your computing session.
And I think there was a time, I think they added to like system preferences back in the day or something where you could change that behavior as well. Don't save changes versus save changes. I can't recall exactly the details, but
all right. Now, we weren't going to get into technical things this show. Really, I don't know if we weren't, but do you notice that Microsoft Office still does that? Like it will block the computer from doing an automatic restart, like a scheduled software update or something. Whatever reason you need to quit Microsoft Word, Word will sit there and be like, hey, there's documents that are unsaved.
I seem to remember Microsoft didn't play nice with those settings. Yeah. It just ignored the save settings on the Apple side.
Adam says his first, I guess this is his first keyboard shortcut on the Apple II. I would reboot the computer by typing PR number 6 at the prompt. So I don't remember that. Do you guys remember that? Like any kind of, what does that mean? PR number 6?
I think £6, right? Like you had to... to put in the pound key. Now I'm trying to remember. Adam, we need some clarity, man.
Yeah. We got to dust off the old Apple II and just try it.
Yeah. I started typing in PR £6 and like the go autofilled Apple afterwards. So there's some history there.
Interesting. Yeah, definitely some history. Yeah, do you remember someone approached us once at an ACES conference and said, yeah, I didn't know what your show meant. And so I tried the keyboard shortcut and I realized it rebooted my computer.
Yeah, that was good.
That was great. Yeah. Oh, it's funny. Yeah, Adam says it would cause the computer to read the floppy drive and run the init program or whatever was on there. Yeah, the whole thing working from floppy drives was really just the grinding sound Jerry was describing earlier. I just remember hearing all this, and because it would go over here and read this, and go over here and read this, and it took a lot of effort for it to go back and forth. And some computers only had one floppy drive, so you'd have to put the floppy disk in to boot the computer and then open a program and do your thing. And then when you wanted to save, you'd have to eject the operating system disk and put in the other disk that would allow you to save files on it, and then switch back and forth. And it was wild. I tried backing up one of my first Macs. It must have been like the Performa 600 CD that I had. I've mentioned on the show before, and it had one floppy drive, and you could back it up. There was, I forget the name of the software that I think Apple produced to back up your computer, and it would back it up across a number of floppy disks because it couldn't fit on one, right? So you'd run the thing from the disk you boot from, then you'd put a disk in to start your backup, and then it would while it's in memory, it would be backing up a bunch of stuff to that disk. It would be done. You'd have to take that disk out, put the next one in. So I have some early computer backups that were spread across 10 floppy drives.
Or 17.
10 floppy disks. Yeah, or more.
Yeah.
Exactly. It just kept going up and up over time. It's like, this is not sustainable. Yeah.
It's interesting, hearkening back to the first hour when we were talking and you had put up that picture. Maybe you could throw it up again, Joe, for the people who didn't see it the first time, where Dwayne had that picture of the server room that had that large piece on the floor.
Oh, the other one. Yeah, let me bring that one up here. Yep.
And what occurs to me is, we joke about it even today. Sometimes I bring it up on the show where, IBMs are for business or PCs are for business and Apple is for the home. But if you look at the hardware here and the amount of effort that was put into making, the piece that's on the floor and the one right above it, Apple, and I would love to know more about that period. It was very clear to me that they were trying to make inroads into the business market and trying to gain some of that market share by making these much beefier computers that you would see in a data center versus underneath somebody's desk. And no matter how hard they tried, they couldn't wipe that stink off their image that it was just a home enthusiast kind of kids sort of thing that was not for the serious computing specialist or for a business. But clearly there was a team or many teams that were trying to push products like this. And I would love to know the history behind all that and how it ebbed and flowed and what was finally causing it to fail.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a subtle thing to do to try to appeal to both ends of that spectrum. The home users, like you're saying, this does appeal to them. The design that would look good in your bedroom or something is not the same design that would appeal to someone trying to rack a bunch of servers most as efficiently as possible. Look at these iMac G3s sitting there taking up all that empty space behind them because of the design or whatever, versus, or even the Power Macs in the same way. They had the handles on the top and the bottom. Like, it's pretty cool design. They were much easier to carry than the later versions, the Power Mac G5s and stuff, with those handles that would practically cut your hand holding them because these were curved and ergonomic. But it's an ergonomic design to look at or to pick up, but not to put it in a rack. And so you would see them haphazardly laid on their side or whatever in some of these racks. And yeah, so how do you do both? It's an interesting question. Was there a team that was building software or building hardware to appeal more to the enterprise? And then on the other end, you've got people, the consumer market. Now they do a pretty good job of walking the line. A Mac Mini appeals to a lot of different people, or a Mac Studio certainly appeals to anybody from a creative professional to somebody doing AI stuff or whatever. It is interesting to see the juxtaposition of those two there.
And of course, I mentioned on the earlier show that Scully is credited for introducing the RISC architecture, which is reduced instruction set computing that we use even present day to a certain extent. And so I'm not a Scully fanboy, but there's certainly a lot more credit there that he deserves. And I think Pogue treated him right in his book and really pointed out some of his smart decisions that he did. Yeah. But it's such a fascinating history. And it's truly amazing if you've gone through even just a little part of it to see how like right now, you would say in the last 10 years, the company has been extremely steady. There's not these emotional waves, but with Steve in charge, there was always something that was going to happen. It was exciting. Sometimes it was great. And sometimes it was great. He thought it was great, but it wasn't so great. But people loved it. People loved the showman entrepreneur side of him. And that's the thing that I really felt was never really captured in the Walter Isaacson book about Steve Jobs. It just didn't capture that magic somehow. It was very clinical and very dissected, and it was very factual, but at the same time, it was missing the magic. Like, why was this guy so magical? They're like, he was nasty to a lot of people. He would tell people, this is horrible. And whatever he had, I've said this on other shows, and other people have repeated this multiple times, when made people say, you know what? I'm going to show you, and go back and make it better. And there's very few people out there that have that type of charisma or that magic to them that can motivate people in that way.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a unique sort of combination that not only he had, but I think it depends on who was working for him. Not everybody's motivated by that kind of negative reinforcement of your work sucks, you're a terrible human. And then they're like, I'll show you, I'll prove to you that I do good work. Some people would just quit. Probably a lot of people did quit. And so, I guess it's a selection bias type of thing as well. But yeah, it's true. I wonder if we need somebody a little more charismatic than Tim Cook for the next 50 years to, clearly we've talked about it, and so has everybody else, just on the OS level. It's just not the same as it was. I remember those days of a pixel perfect OS. You wouldn't have bugs where it's just like visual cruft where you're getting a peek behind the scenes. Oh, I see how this is coded. This is really sloppy almost. Or it just seems like back in the day, there was a lot more of a very clear there's a level of perfection in the OS. Maybe that sounds a little crazy because we certainly went through a lot of phases where things fell apart before your very eyes. But it seemed like back then, the services backing things were worse. Mobile Me or whatever was like, we'd be troubleshooting contact syncing, blowing up every couple of weeks or whatever. There were a lot of like back-end services that were problematic, but the OS itself seemed like really well put together. Now it seems like the opposite. iCloud is really reliable and good, very well designed, security focused, all that stuff. But the OS is just buggier. I had a calendar thing happen last week where I have several calendars all through my main account, and one of them just stopped showing up and there was no error. There's supposed to be something on my calendar here, but it's on a particular calendar that's like my secondary calendar. Just wasn't there. Okay, toggle it off, toggle it back on. Didn't work. Quit, reopen, no, restart, no solution. So eventually, like turning off calendars, quitting and reopening the app and turning on calendars, and then they all have to re-download, and that fixed it. And I'm just like, what happened there? Why did it just stop showing that one calendar? Historical events, current events, it just all went away. Just weird stuff like that happens. And yeah, I don't know what would Steve have done, just not tolerate it. Is that the way you do it? You yell at people and you just eviscerate them and say your work is terrible. How could this ever happen? You embarrass me on stage, whatever it takes. And then they really put the extra time in to make it perfect? Or are things just that much more complicated now? It's been a long time since Steve passed away. Everything has continued to evolve and get more complicated. So is an OS just too big for a team of humans to properly build? I don't know. Yeah, what do you guys think about that?
I want to say there might be some history there that we see as squeaky clean when it wasn't necessarily always. Like when Steve was here, this was like this thing.
Right.
Because there were certainly issues. And to Jerry's point, he had great ideas and also some of them were not so awesome. So I think there was a lot of ups and downs through his tenure as well. Dwayne was saying how now they can ship with potential minor bugs and say, hey, we'll get public beta or public feedback, and then we'll update it in the 0.1. So I think that's like a different approach than what used to happen as like we got to release a picture perfect OS.
Yeah. Here's a couple more from Dwayne. He said, when Steve announced the ship date for the original iPad, the next day, 20 engineers were on a plane to China. Yeah, I've met some of the people that do QA, and hardware QA seems like they still are really on top of that, because I think they know when the hardware ships, you're not going to, the last thing Apple needs, at least from the perspective of their shareholders, is a recall. Okay, we shipped that hardware, but turns out we're going to need it back so we can send you a new one. They don't want that to happen. They can't let that happen. But like Dwayne said, and like you just shared, Sam, they don't do with software. They figure, close enough, it's going to be buggy. That's what updates are for. And yeah, so this is actually another one from Dwayne. Burrell Smith, who did the original power supply for the Mac, said Steve made him a better engineer than he ever dreamed he could be. But when he left Apple, he wanted to urinate on his desk. So there comes the territory, I guess. Imagine the attention to detail that Steve had for a power supply in the Mac. This is like one aspect of one product. He was like laser focused on that among many other things. I've actually heard stories also from engineers at Apple about engineering, the level of, again, quality assurance that goes into a power supply for the iPhone, for example, does a couple things. One is like it can't catch fire. It just can't. Like we have to do You have to cancel your kid's birthday. You have to cancel your family vacation. You have to make sure this will not happen, and it has to ship by this date. So there's some things that they really hold a hard line on. They also do amazing feats of engineering to make sure it's as power efficient as possible, because literally you ship millions of these things. If you save a couple of millivolts here and there, you save the world some material amount of power. So they focus on this stuff on the hardware side. And I think Dwayne probably nailed it. If software, it's just a different category. They know they can fix it later. And that's the answer for everything, is fix it later with software.
I think the fit and the finish on the hardware has gotten better. Exceptionally better over the years. It used to be that the software was better and the fit and finish on the hardware, but now those roles have been reversed. Yeah. And the fact that so many people can find holes in the operating system annoyances that we deal with every day. If you listen to someone like John Gruber, he's talking about the topography and how different workflows are represented and why things are done the way they did. They abandoned the human interface guidelines that they had in place for many years. And now it's somewhat followed, but for the most part, there's all this wiggle room. So it's just experientially, just for the simple fact, when we do client support and we're in system settings, unless we know this cold, we're using the search box to find profile.
I'll admit that here.
For system management. And so it's, I could hunt for system management, but if I put in profile, I'm going to get there. I'm going to put in the profile or do whatever. So just that alone, it's so problematic. And I think
that's such a great example, Jerry, just to jump in there. Imagine in the early days of computers, Apple came out with the graphical user interface. So you didn't have to type things in from memory. Like now we're back to a command line interface to find where do I find profiles? Like it should be 2 clicks that are very easy to remember. That was the whole point of the GUI, which is like Apple's main innovation in the early days. You're telling a story now where you're back to typing in essentially a command, like typing in profiles just to find the thing in the GUI because it's not obvious. And clearly there's a failing there where people like us are actually typing in the thing we're looking for because it's not obvious where to find it.
It moved. Yeah. Like now it is 2 clicks away, but it did move. So that became confusing from one OS to the next. It's like,
granted, it moved a couple of times, didn't it? It was originally profiles, its own thing in system preferences. Then it was under privacy and security, I think. Did they change the name of that? Was it security and privacy in one version? Yes, okay. So that's 3 changes right there. And now it's under general, scroll to the bottom. You guys are going to keep moving it. I'm going to keep forgetting. I'm just going to search every time. Yeah. So I remember now, but Jerry's saying, how many times are you going to move the cheese, as they say, before I'm going to stop? Is that the right term? I don't know. Before I'm going to stop playing this game with you to go find where you put profiles. I'm just going to search.
Yeah. Now, technically, someone could say, you're doing more. It's 2026. This is not the days of Jaguar, as Steve would call it, or Panther, right? Yeah. That's true. But at the same time, there's so many layers to this OS. And there's no turning back at this point. We're so far down the rabbit hole, and there's all these maybe Dante's rings of hell that we get caught up in. And there's no way like somebody could come in with some mastermind and somehow pull this all together. It's just a question of how much more do we want to keep piling on? Do we want another 100 new features this fall? Where does it end?
I go back to, this is my hobby horse, I always refer back to this concept of shareholder primacy. It means that the people who own the stock, you answer to them and basically no one else. And Steve, going back to Steve, his whole thing was the customer, right? The customer was the first person you answer, the first and last person you answer to. Developers were off to the side somewhere. It's like Apple first, customers second, developers like way far down the line on number 3. But capitalism, or this modern corporate structure, says for public companies, you have to answer to the shareholders. Like they gave you money so that you could earn a bunch of money and give a little bit back to them. You owe them. You're indebted to your shareholders, so you have to do what's best for your shareholders. And it's okay. So shareholders are directing what's best for Apple? Yeah. Why does Apple release an OS every year? I didn't tell them to do that. The users didn't say, I want something to change every... Users, we hear this every day. They don't want it to change. Why do you keep changing my OS? I don't ever install updates. This is what users actually say. They don't want change. They don't want new OSs. They don't want 1,000 new features or whatever it is. They want you to just stop moving things around. Why are you moving profiles 5 times in 5 years? Just don't do that. I used to make fun of Microsoft that I would learn where something was in Word, and every new version of Word, they would just arbitrarily move it for no good reason. This is what Apple's been doing. And so I think it's the yearly cadence for their OS releases. We don't need a brand new OS every year. Since when did that become this thing that we all just assume is like a truism? Like you have to release it. Microsoft doesn't do that. Why does Apple do that?
But it could be argued that doesn't even serve the shareholders anyway, because they're not selling the operating system. It doesn't cost you any more money to get the 100 new features. So what's the motivation? The motivation should be we put out new products, we're going to drive sales. It's not necessarily adding 50 more features to the OS is going to drive our sales.
I agree. I just think it's misguided but I think that where does that come from then?
I don't know.
But I think if you're releasing new hardware, this is just where I'm going with this, is like in my head, if you're releasing new hardware, you don't want that hardware to look with the old OS because that's old and the hardware is new. So I feel like there's a little bit of, we need to make it all look new. So we're going to release a new OS along with, that doesn't fall at the same timeline as new hardware, but it has that fancy new look to it.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's just my thinking. But I get what you're saying, like in terms of the moving of things, like it does get a little annoying. Yeah. Hopefully users aren't navigating the profiles anyway, but a guy like the ones that have to go there.
Yeah, a guy like Sam Joe has built his career on things moving around. If things didn't move around and things didn't change, Sam, for the most part, would not have a job.
A guy like Sam, what do you mean?
And you'd be trained once and you would just know the answer.
Oh yeah.
Never like
any other so that you know where to find it.
Yeah.
If nothing changed, we wouldn't have to get more certifications. It would be, and Sam would be penniless. Him and his family would be kicked to the curb. They need this.
But like anything, there's a balance in life. The real work is sussing out the nuance of this. Like how many times per 5-year period should profiles be moved? I don't know, like maybe 0, maybe 1. It's like you redesign system preferences, you go to system settings, just put it somewhere and that's probably the right place. It's not like it's better.
Like you said, where is that coming from? Who's doing this?
I think that's a good point. You want it to look new. That's the consumerism. Like, how do you sell more products to people? Planned obsolescence is one actual way that people do that. I'm not saying Apple does. I think that Apple does a lot to counter that. They do some things that just are part of that. Why do they stop supporting the older devices at a certain point in time? Like they probably could still support an 8 or 9 or 10-year-old Mac. They could. It's not in their shareholders' interest if they do that because they want to sell you new hardware. But they can why do cars change it's like the new car suddenly makes the old car, the old model, look really old. I don't know. There's some psychology that happens to us where, man, my car looks old now. I guess I need a new one.
But that's even worse. Like Jerry, Joe doesn't buy new cars these days.
He doesn't buy cars.
Or update. Van down by the river. But if we look at if you buy a car and then the next year they remodel that car, that's so frustrating.
It is. It is.
But renaming profiles or moving it to another location does not make my computer look older or newer. It just makes it more difficult. But it puts bread on Sam's table.
So you think it's the trainers that are doing this? I think it's the trainer conspiracy. Yeah.
Some diabolical HCS money
people
grab.
Listening, this is what happens, man. These guys gang up on me.
No, I think you're onto something with it has to look new and shiny, especially if they want to sell new hardware. They never make a distinction that, hey, by the way, you can get the new look on your 1 or 2-year-old iPhone. They don't say that. They don't hide it, but they're implying like when they show this product, the product shot of the new iPhone, to your point, if it looked exactly like the phone they have in their hand already, people would just say, I guess I already have that. I don't know. Is it even new? So making the software look different over time, I guess, is part of selling products. But You could polish stuff without moving everything around or fundamentally breaking things. But so the other thing to look at here into the future, because maybe this is going to get better. We went through these cycles we talked about mostly in part one. Motorola processors, what do they call it? I want to say like my old zip code, the x86. The Motorola was like the 08.
Yeah, but then we had the Power PC, so that
then
was
went
the
Power PC,
last iteration,
and that was the RISC processor.
That's right.
This went to the RISC processor, and I remember like reading in some magazine it was the first supercomputer. It was a supercomputer on your desk because it did like a million flops or something. I don't know, but it was so fast, right?
Gigaflops.
Gigaflops, yeah. They went from the Motorola style x86 to Power PC, and this was all before anybody cared what Apple was doing. So then we had, for a long time, the IBM Power PC line, and then they went to Intel, and that was an amazing announcement. And of course, we've just gone back to now Apple Silicon, so we're going through another transition. When they went from Power PC to Intel, there was a release in there that everybody keeps referring to, the Snow Leopard release. No new features, as Jerry keeps saying. No new features. Snow Leopard was also the first. What did you say, Jerry?
This is your little.
No, you say no new features.
Yeah, you say no new features.
Yeah, I thought you were saying. So anyway, okay.
All you want is 10.6 back. That's all.
I want. No, so 10.6 Snow Leopard was the first Intel only release, like OS release. It just so happens that it was also the no new features, the one that everybody sings the praises of. And as I mentioned recently, I don't actually remember if it was Howard Oakley or it might have been like Mr. Macintosh. Somebody recently pointed out how actually there were a bunch of new features in that OS. We all pretend that it's this perfect thing that we're trying to aim for again, but you can do new features and you can also polish the OS and make it really bulletproof. And that's what they achieved with Snow Leopard, more or less. And I wonder if it was partially because it was a single platform. They didn't have this legacy code base that they had to continue to maintain compatibility with. They were able to scrap all the, at that time, Power PC stuff and just focus on this, making it work really well for Intel. So maybe next year when it will, do we know that it will be Apple Silicon only, no more Intel, I think at that point, whatever macOS 27, like that they released this year. Yeah. That will be, I think, Apple Silicon only. Maybe this will give them that kind of opportunity to do the quote, no new features. I think they'll probably make a nod to that. Everyone's clamoring for it. It would be crazy if they said, we're not doing that. We're releasing a bunch of new features and we're moving profiles again just for the command control power guys. But I think there's a good chance we'll get a solid release this time around, and it's about damn time. There's a balance they have to find between some new features and mostly devoting engineering resources to fixing bugs and making all the windows look the same and stop changing the corner radius and all that.
Oh, man. I can't wait to see profiles move. It's going to be awesome.
Yeah, one more time. Yeah.
You could do a whole chapter on that, Sam.
Yeah.
In your class.
We'll do a whole show about it when it happens. You guys ranting. It'll be awesome.
Imagine the sales, Sam. You would just have moving profiles that puts the asses in the seats, doesn't it? In the classroom.
We're going to create a new class called How to Find Profiles.
So the move to Intel, did you guys ever own a Core Duo machine, or did you buy the Core? Did you wait a little longer to get the Core?
I helped clients with Core Duo. Those were dogs, though. Those were like way worse than Core.
They had the Core 2, yeah. I got a Core Duo used. I bought it from a kid at a college because he was ready to let it go because he needed the faster processor. But that was very interesting, too, that transition. And it took a long time to really see any sort of improvement. What really made your machine sing was when we could buy a third-party SSD and put it inside our portable, our Mac. And that was a big inflection point as well in terms of just being able to keep up with the other PCs that were out there.
Yeah, that's a good point. That an SSD upgrade was the Apple Silicon of the Intel era. It's like you're saying, that made a difference. And I remember telling clients back then, buying a new Mac with a hard drive, I don't care what Apple's saying about the processing power and the memory and all this other stuff, you almost won't even notice a difference on your new Mac compared to your old Mac. other than if you go to an SSD. That's what actually is a noticeable improvement. Going to new like hardware, whether you're going from PowerPC to Intel or early generation Intel to late generation Intel, that made almost no difference compared to going to SSD, let alone now with this Apple Silicon transition. They're still so far ahead of everybody else. It's really impressive. Speaking of things moving though, did you guys notice with the recent BSI that's not in software update? It's under privacy and security. Maybe that's a PSA for people out there, but the background security improvement, the BSI, formerly called, Sam, help me out, RSR.
Yeah. What did you just say the acronym was?
Wasn't it RSR for the previous one? And now it's BSI.
The Rapid Security Release.
Rapid Security Release. Thank you.
Yeah.
They used that once ever, I think, as far as we know, and they broke stuff. The RSR that they did. I think there was only ever one RSR, but anyway, that's now called the BSI background security improvement. They did one for 26.3.1A was the BSI. That is found in privacy and security when it's needed. It's not found in software update. So speaking of this moving things around and making system settings a guessing game, I just was surprised. Why is that? I don't
know, but this is amusing me, actually.
Yeah. These are all the little complaints. I'm supposed to be celebrating Apple. You know, maybe the first half of the show is more of the walk down memory lane and celebrating Apple. And now we're like, what are you guys?
Now Grumpy Joe is back.
Yeah. Here, let's take us back down memory lane here. This is yet another contribution from Dwayne. Thank you, Dwayne Moss, for contributing so much to this show. This is a table showing 4 of those
Coke cans, 3 Coke cans, 2 Coke cans.
No, one's Pepsi.
There's a Pepsi.
Yeah.
2 Cokes and a Pepsi.
But
3 Cokes and a Pepsi, I think. I see one in the back.
Oh, yeah.
The first thing I noticed was the Macs, but you guys are talking about the soda. Maybe you're thirsty, but yeah, 4 Macs around a table. It's just interesting snapshot in time here. I feel like I've been to clients like that.
And all those thick iMacs were just like boat anchors in terms of weight. Oh my gosh.
So heavy. Imagine all that weight being shipped all over the world. And
I hated to lug those around.
Yeah. Did you guys have those? I bought a case with wheels that like you could put the iMac in a sleeve and roll it if you needed to repair it. I had one of those.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Which model? For the iMac?
They had like these honking 27 inches that were like just super heavy.
Yeah. I had padded cases for those too.
Yeah.
Because we used to go, do like Jerry was saying, that these SSD upgrades, that was a really big offering for us for a long time because people were so impressed with the outcome of those.
I remember that.
Yeah.
Until the screen started falling off for me.
It's the cheap tape.
It wasn't the cheap tape. It was the environmental. It wasn't the technician, it was environmental. So is there a Apple device or thing that you use, where it could be your computer, could be anything, that you just love or delights you every single day? Because I have one.
My watch.
For yours. Yeah.
That's the way, exactly, Sam. That's exactly the way I feel.
You guys both say the watch. Huh.
Yeah.
It delights you every day. Maybe I need a new one. This is like the Series 7
like,
or something.
If I work out without the watch, it's like it didn't happen. Like I need my watch.
I understand that.
Give me that. Yes, I just did that.
Yeah.
But no, you're out on a walk or a hike or whatever, and somebody texts you. You could. It's truly delightful, especially with the cellular connection. I wouldn't buy it any other way. Now you've got the more expensive watch, and I've got the standard issue watch, Sam, but that truly is a product for me that's been transformative. I wear it all the time. I wear it to sleep. I gauge my sleeping patterns with it. I don't hover and call the data and make charts and things like that, but just in the joy that it gives me just to stay in communication and to have it on my wrist. And I never was a watch wearer at all, ever in my life. I had a really nice watch that just ended up staying in a closet drawer or a drawer.
Yeah.
Closet drawer.
Closet drawer. Yeah.
Or in your closet.
Yeah, when I'm in my closet, I put it in my drawers.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I've never worn a watch since I was a kid or something, like until the Apple Watch. And I think you guys are both right. It's largely for the metrics from my walks, basically, and hikes and things. Yeah. Sometimes a yoga class that I'll track that. And it does feel good that, I don't know, it feels like someone is keeping track of this and it's just my watch. But yeah, it's like you get credit for it.
Instead of running like a jerk to the counter where your phone is, you could pick up a phone call.
Yeah, true.
How nice is that?
Yep.
I typically don't do that with my watch, but yeah, I hear you.
I got this
I don't
little
answer a
add-on.
client on it typically, but yeah, if my wife's
Hello?
calling me, I'm like, yeah.
I've got this little add-on to my watch where if we're sitting down and having dinner and a particular track is too loud, I can turn down the volume with the crown.
Yeah,
that's
nice.
cool.
That's cool.
And that's wow.
That's magic. I agree.
Yeah.
That's a very cool feature. Okay, you're convincing me.
Jumping on board?
I'm right there between you guys and Adam Rice. Adam says, I think AirPods are probably the best product ever. I've said that on the show before. We're not the first people to say
no
this,
argument there.
Yeah, this is a product where it's Apple at their best, and just in terms of how it works across all your devices, but just it's so reliable and such high quality audio. It changes my experience of being on an airplane. Like it's just really nice not to have that droning sound of the engines or the people around you and the chaos. It just actually adds to my quality of life in that way. And not to mention, I literally use it almost all day, every day, whether I'm listening to a podcast or music while I'm working, or mostly on the phone with clients. It's just such an easy thing to just have that. I can walk around, I can pace around the room, and they just work. It's great. Yeah. And Dwayne agrees with you guys. The watch, he loves it for everything, especially golf. So there you go. I'm sure it can probably track your swing and steps, obviously, as you walk around the course.
Yeah, although I will say that like a lot of the younger generation are going back to corded AirPods. I don't know if you guys have seen that.
I've noticed that.
That's like a trend. I think it's like more of a retro trend. Some people have talked about just Bluetooth being bad or something like that, but it's more on the retro trend, I think. And it's funny to see that stuff start to come back when it's like a thing of the past. But I will agree that the AirPods are transformative. They've done so much.
Yeah.
I love mine.
Yeah, the handoff is quite fantastic most of the time.
Yeah.
From
it's
the
gotten
phone
so much better.
Back to the computer. It's really great.
Yeah, I would agree with you there. That's something only Apple can really do, just having that level of integration. Although the EU is trying to convince them to make all that possible for anybody, which I understand that there's good sentiment behind that, but that opens them up to, there's a lot of privacy concerns with that. This was from John Brown, shared his family of iPhones there. So we can all relate to something like that. That's like
iOS 4.
Yeah. Can you identify some of those phones there, guys? I see home buttons on all of them. So it's got to be, what was before Touch ID? iPhone 5S maybe? Does that sound right?
In the 5s, yeah. I'm trying to think of like the time that Touch ID and then eventually Face ID turned into that. But do you know, Jerry?
I have no idea. These all look the same to me. I have them. I have a box where they're all in there, and I just don't care to pull them out. I'm more interested in the iPod than I am either a phone or an iPod phone.
Yeah.
Or the phones that look like, or the iPods that look like phones. Those don't interest me either. But the old traditional iPod with the click wheel, love those.
Yeah. Yeah. Those were cool.
Yeah.
I see YouTube on the third one, and the middle one, rather. It's the old school YouTube TV.
Oh,
icon.
yeah. When that's actually the emoji, like a TV emoji still, I think. Is that right?
Maybe. Yeah. That's a good one.
That was the one when Apple, is this right? Apple designed that. They made sure to include YouTube on the first iPhone, but I don't think they let Google into the phone.
You can take an old click wheel iPod with the 30-pin connector, and you could either get an adapter to USB-C or USB-A to USB-C, plug it into your brand new Mac, out of the box, plug it in. It's recognized in Finder.
What is?
The click wheel iPod, and you could drag music to it. Yeah, you could drag music to it. It's like it's never left.
Wow.
Yeah, it's
that's
pretty
wild. That
pretty amazing that they have
that.
backwards compatibility like that.
Compati?
Yeah. No, that is really interesting. Let's see. This is also John Brown.
There's John Brown.
He's in the photo, unboxing and what does he say here? An Xserve.
Yeah, sure looks like it.
Yep. And so there it is in the huge. Oh, yeah, you can even see the Apple logo on the box there. Yep. And there's a rack of, it looks like Dell servers behind him. So this was I guess maybe Mac going in to replace some or add to one of his clients there. Yeah, we've all been doing this for a long time, guys. This is amazing. Here's something that's pretty interesting too. Dwayne shared this as well, which is I guess it looks like Is this like an Apple badge? Not a badge, but an entry card or something like that?
So maybe an Apple purchase, an Apple internal purchase card of some sort.
Oh, okay. That makes sense. Yeah.
The original Apple credit card, he said.
That's what Dwayne says. Yeah. That's funny.
But it was only for Apple gear, and it was only available to employees, I believe.
That's so interesting. Yeah, like throwing.
I didn't know he had 3 tours at Apple.
Yeah, it's pretty wild to hear that story. That's awesome. Dwayne's got a lot of interesting stories from the field of what it was like to be at Apple corporate and be there when a lot of this stuff was happening. That is pretty interesting. I wish I could find this video for you guys to play. Sam, you were talking about the AirPods versus the wired earbuds. But I get it. Are they worried about RF in their ears or something? But those cords, I just can't deal with it. I don't know how people do that. Like walking around with cords everywhere, pulling things out of your ear and everything. I don't know.
Well, if you're a true audiophile, right, you're going to use wired with your phone or with your Samsung phone to get.
That's true too.
Because the Bluetooth codec standard is still lossy. It's not true lossless. And the only way to get lossless, that's why with the Apple headphones,
AirPods Max,
the AirPods Max, to get true lossless, meaning no degradation in signal, you need a wire.
Interesting. Right. Yep. You're the audiophile here.
Yeah.
No, I'm just saying. But I think what Sam's saying is it's more of a statement. It's more of a fashion statement.
It is. Well, it seems good, I'll say. I think that's the thing.
2 turntables and a microphone. That's what I'm saying.
Nice. I certainly enjoyed seeing the submissions from people in here, and just seeing some of the throwback photos and stuff was pretty amazing.
Yeah. Thank you everybody for listening and contributing. This was great. Couldn't do it without you.
Yeah, really appreciate it. This is one Sam shared. I don't know where you got this photo, Sam, but I'll go ahead and share it. This is the early days of my operation.
You had like some kind of local gathering, and I came over and I took a shot.
What a mess. What an absolute mess this was. But yeah, this is called a startup. This is a startup, operation there. And I had a workbench behind my desk. I had a desk with facing computers, so you could have 2 people sitting and working there. Another workstation where I had a stack of, it looks like Mac Mini servers and storage and things, and an airport, maybe Extreme on the wall there.
I see that. Yeah. The airport base station is what that is.
Nice. Airport base station, exactly.
The dome. Yeah, the dome-shaped.
The dome, yeah.
Yeah, actually, at the time, I think I was just taking secret photos of my competition, but now
right. Yeah, exactly. That's what it is. Yeah. Oh, man. Yeah, fun times, though. That's the evolution. From now, I'm all about keep it simple and not over-engineer. I love the remote work lifestyle and not having to be at a desk in an office or on-site, even with clients most of the time. Although I did have my very first on-site new client meeting very recently, local here, and it just got me back on track with being available for on-sites again. So that was awesome. Fun here. Yeah, it was neat.
Well, Jerry's doing the symbols.
This is the send-off. When Jerry starts making hand gestures and mudras on screen here, he's ready to hang up his. So
that's how you know Jerry's done.
That is how you know. Thanks, everybody, for participating and sending us your fun memories and sharing your memories of Apple and your world and what Apple has meant to you. For me, Apple has meant everything. I'm Team Apple all the way. I've been down this road professionally for 22 years now, and I really owe a lot of it to Apple. They've inspired me to do what I do for a living, and I feel like I backed the right company back when I got started in my business and everything else. With all the complaints that I've shared over the years from the podcast, even including up until and including today. Thanks, Apple, for being there. And thank you to all of our colleagues for being there today with us and helping us celebrate. And here's to another 50 years of awesomeness from Apple. I'm really glad Apple's out there, really aiming for privacy, not always doing it perfectly, but aiming for privacy and security and integration with all this stuff and making technology accessible to regular people. And Apple does that, and we help Apple do that. And I'm honored to be able to make a living doing it. Thanks, everybody, once again for helping us celebrate. Happy 50th birthday / anniversary, Apple. And cue up your party reaction, everybody, and we'll send them off with that. Thanks a lot for listening to Command Control Power. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. Find out more at commandcontrolpower.com. And thanks again. Command, control, power.
faces of customers of all kinds.
Am I on the cloud?
Joe spins his deeply detailed yarn.